Episode 46 of The Human Experience is Tony's story. Tony has spent much of his career in Nashville as a musician and independent producer. He is not unfamiliar with the music business and has himself been nominated for multiple Grammys. But Tony's latest project kind of fell into his lap. Though he had not had any real interaction with the autistic community in the past, Tony found himself hosting a podcast called Why Not Me the World, where he interviews people with autism about their stories and experiences. It has opened up a world of compassion and understanding to Tony that he is eager to share with others. Our conversation was a great reminder that our dreams can shift and change as we grow, and that though the road we're walking down may not look like the one we imagined, there are many ways to realize our dreams. You can find links to Tony's show Why Not Me the World in the show notes. This episode was recorded in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. You can join our community of storytellers by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, signing up for my newsletter, following me on Instagram, and more. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance.
I do really appreciate you sitting down with me and letting us use your studio to do this, because I've never gotten this lucky with a space to record. But I want to hear about your story and where that starts. So I'm assuming that starts where you grew up, but you take that question however you want to.
I was born and raised in a little town called Madison, Maine.
Okay.
And I was born and raised on a dairy farm.
Oh.
And we were just like any other family, just trying to get out there and do what we do. And I was at like 8 years old, and we had an old beat up piano that was sitting in the house. I would go over there and I would play it and pound on it. So my mother says, let's get it fixed up. Let's see where this is going to go. So she went out and got new ivories on it and new felts and tuned it up and just really made it look really good. And it sounded good. So I went to piano lessons and started learning.
Nice. That's really awesome that your mom took it that far. I feel like a lot of people would have just been like, oh, that's just broken. We're not going to, that's nice. You can play around on it. But it's special that she actually took the time and effort to get it fixed for you.
Yeah, she did. The cool part is after, I can't remember how many years, I was practicing and playing. Things got busy. I was in high school and I got to the point of where I wasn't practicing like I should. So she got ticked off and she says, if you're going to take and not do this, then we're not going to pay for you to do this. So I had to really get back into, okay, what do I want to do? So needless to say, I love music, so I wasn't going to let it go. So I got back into practicing and doing what I was supposed to do and making sure I spent the time and just kept on going with it.
Yeah. That's fantastic. What was it about the piano that drew you in? Did you have something specific that you knew you loved about music right away, or?
No, just that we had one.
Yeah.
If my father had a guitar, I'd probably picked up the guitar and played.
Sure.
It. Matter of fact, there's a picture that I put up on Facebook every now and then. I think I was like, 7 or 8 years old. I'm sitting on some cardboard box or whatever, and I've got a guitar in my hand, and it's just a toy one. So that everybody loves that when I put that up, because look at you when you was back there, and then they think because of that I play guitar, which I never learned.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So piano was it. I started learning from that and kept with that.
Yeah, because now you have been in the music industry for your adult life, right? Most of your adult life. So what was the transition then to, I really liked playing music when I was a kid and growing up, to this is my life, this is my livelihood?
How it all worked is during high school, I was part of the band, and they had in order to get in the band, they wanted me to come in and do percussion and all that. And I really wasn't going to do just percussion. I said, nah, I'm a piano player. So I think I'll just stick with what I've got. So the band director said to me, he says, if you come in and do percussion for the concert band, percussion for the marching band, and then some sort of percussion for the band that goes out and plays for the football games and that type of thing, we'll create a stage band for you. They created a stage band, and we had this grand piano. And every time that the school had any type of function where the whole classes were there before the stage band would play, I got to be known in my little school as much as the football and basketball players and everything, because I was front and center a lot of times with the music. So once I got out of high school, I had to really make a decision. So I just joined a local band and started learning the chops of playing and at dances and doing things like that. And the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it more. And I just kept building.
Very cool. Why percussion? Why did they need you to do percussion?
I think that's one of the, because I can't play trumpet, sax, clarinet, any of those. Whereas percussion, that's bass, drum, that's snare, cymbals, timpani, some of the things that wouldn't be hard to train, and where I had a basis of knowledge of some of the music, it wasn't all that hard to do.
Okay. That's pretty incredible that they made that trade-off for you.
It was. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I sit back and look at it, that was a fun thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. So what then got you into more a professional role in music?
I started recording with the band that I joined out of high school. I started doing some recordings in some local studios. And if people listening to this happen to remember Peter, Paul, and Mary back in the 60s, Noel Paul Stokey was one of the singers in that. And he actually started a studio in Maine, down along the coast. So that's where I recorded.
Wow.
And I would talk with him a little bit, and he would tell me some things, and just led me to believe more that I really wanted to do this. Of course, most of the people, and I understand why, didn't think I had stood a chance. Because Madison was a mill town at the time. If you got into the mill, got into the local power company, got into those type of jobs, you had a job for life. It was like, that was I knew a friend of mine that got hired by the Central Maine Power, and he come up to me, he goes, my ship has come in, because that was his dream job.
Wow.
So that was what everybody could make the big money on. Whereas music, everybody looked at as a hobby. And so it was like, I didn't look at it as a hobby. I said, I can do this. A friend of mine we were talking one day, and he asked me, he says, what makes you think that you can do this? And a Tony Orlando song came on, and I said, you don't think that for 1 minute that you've take Tony Orlando's voice out of that and put my voice in it, that it wouldn't be as good? It would just be a different voice. And he looked at me, he goes, I never thought about it that way. He goes, maybe you do.
Yeah.
But most people thought I didn't, because it wasn't the norm. It was your norm there was 9 to 5 job, Monday through Friday, mill job, power job, working in the grocery store, those type of things. That was normal.
Yeah.
When you started thinking about music or anything bigger than life, because that wasn't part of our environment, then it wasn't. It was just a pipe dream.
Yeah. That's so true. And I think that still will resonate with a lot of people today, because
Sure.
even going into the music industry still, the idea that you can do it and you can make it, that takes a lot of confidence and courage, especially for someone so young.
It does. And even here in Nashville, look at Taylor Swift. Okay, that's a perfect example of someone that no one thought could do anything that wound up be the biggest thing in the world. When she first started out, she struggled just like everybody else. She has some big time people behind her, which helped her. but she struggled, and she's from a little town down here in Henderson. A lot of people looked at her and said, what, she's struggling, she doesn't sing that right now, what chance does she have? And now 15, 20 years later, she's the biggest thing in the world. So you never know. You've just got to do your due diligence, form your plan, keep working at it, and see where it leads you.
Yeah. Put the work in.
Yeah.
I think that's 100% correct. And I think a lot of times we give up before we've really exhausted our options because everybody around us is saying you can't do it. And we don't necessarily have the confidence and the dedication to keep pushing.
It's like the person that buys this car and it keeps breaking down. He keeps fixing it. And then finally it breaks down again after 10 or 15 times or whatever, and he sells it. And then the person that buys it fixes that one thing, and then it lasts him 10 years. You never know what that last component is going to do for you. So if you give up before you do that last one, you might not know what ever could have happened. So I'm a firm believer in go out there and give it your best shot. It's like when I first moved here, I moved here in 93, and I had a lot of people saying, what happens if it don't work? You sold your house. You gave up your job. You done all this. I said, what's the worst case scenario? There's two, actually. That's what? I said, it doesn't work, but yet I find a job down there, and I like it down there, and I stay there, and I do well. Or it doesn't work, and I don't like it down there, and I move back, and I rebuild. I said, that's my options. I said, but there's a third one. What's that? It works, you know? And so you just got to take and go out there and believe in yourself, be realistic. Don't have goals that are unrealistic because they will defeat you. You've got to have realistic goals, short-term goals, long-term goals, and hit those short-term. And then after a while, you can look back, you can say, well, look at the body of work I've built. And then all of a sudden you start feeling good about yourself and you create more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a tightrope that you have to walk too, right? That the tension of having enough confidence to keep going, but setting realistic goals so that you don't burn yourself out before you've even got the chance to make something.
I tell everybody, you're never as good as what people tell you are, and you're never as bad as what people say you are. So you can't believe your own hype. You've got to go out there and just keep working, building, and hopefully it gets you to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not going to get you where, but there's a fine line there that maybe it leads you to something else. Because I had everybody that comes to Nashville, New York, LA, depending on the style of music they want to do, they've all got the same dream. They want to either be a singer-songwriter, they want to be a songwriter that writes hit records, or they want to be a singer that gets out there and sings hit records. They want to take and do national tours and build the fan base and make money that way. What we was talking with Taylor Swift and all that. But there's a fine line between those that are actually superstars, those that are just very well-known stars, and those that survive, and those that don't. I was the one that I put records out, and I had some hit records, hit the top 40, hit the charts all across the country. But I never got that one big hit that took me from point A to point B. And that point B is where I'm traveling, doing tours, doing shows, making money, and becoming a star. Then when you get to that point, then you get that select few that do that. They get the small hit records, then they get well known. Then all of a sudden something clicks, and all of a sudden they're just a monster star. There aren't many monster stars, but there are a lot of stars that have done very well, had a lot of hit records, made a lot of money, done a lot of tours. And then those that people will never hear of that do enough to survive, but yet they're doing what they love to do. Music is their life. It's just not made them rich and famous, but it's made a living for them. And then those that give up. Or another transition is there are those that are like me that don't give up, but make the transition from, I don't think I'm going to take and travel all over the country and do all this just to make my $100 or whatever the money may be, even though I may make a good living. I make the transition to something else. So my transition was production development.
Yeah.
And that developed from there. So there's all kinds of things and ways of looking at it. You just have to take and plan it out and see where it leads you. And then when you hit that point where there's a path A or a path B, you got to make, okay, path A is this, path B is this. Then you make the decision on what you think is going to be best for you, for your short-term goals and your long-term goals.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the idea that things can change too, right? As
Right.
you started out thinking you were going to be, I'm assuming, a musician the whole time, and then you switch into production. Yeah. So things can change too. Your goals can change.
Yeah. If anybody had told me that I was going to take this path and I was going to be doing today what I'm doing, I would have laughed at them. Because my goal back then was to be a singer-songwriter and get people to know me for my songs that either the songs that I write, co-write, or if I didn't write them, the songs that I sing, and get people knowing me for that, and hopefully coming to my concerts and doing all that. And I don't know if I'd stayed on that path. There's nothing that said I wouldn't,
Sure.
because I was still having a lot of good success at radio, and I was putting records out and they were hitting the charts. But I had two people that produced me, Bob Millsap and Gary Paxton. Bob had produced and worked with a lot of big stars, and he published the song that Anne Murray made a big hit, was You Needed Me. Gary Paxton had produced and worked, published, and done a lot of big things. And he was a lead singer of the Argyles that had Alley Oop, and he was part of the Monster Mash, and he's done some big things. They actually are the ones that talked me into getting off the road and moving to Nashville.
Oh, wow.
Because they were getting ready to retire. So Bob says to me, man, he goes, you understand business, you understand a good song, you understand how the business works. Why don't you get yourself off the road and beating your head against the wall and do what we're doing, because we're getting ready to retire. And that was a big change, because that meant that I had to move. That meant that I had to uproot and make a transformation into something, and it wasn't something that came naturally to me because I didn't know it.
Yeah.
I had to get out there and build it. So it was like, okay, what do I do here? So I decided that it made the most sense for both short-term and long-term goals to stay in music, because I didn't want to be one of those guys that was out in 70 years old playing these dive bars.
Yeah.
I said, no, I didn't want to be that. Even though I love music, I love performing, I just didn't want to be doing that. And I had a lot of friends of mine that were doing that. And I'm going, no, I don't want to do that. I want to be, if I'm performing, I want to be performing in good places that when I go in, they're wanting me there. It's not just something to do. So I had to make a decision, and I sat down, and really took me a while to think it out. But I decided, okay, it makes more sense to come to Nashville and get into the production end and see where that would take me, because that allowed me to stay in music, which is what I love to do, and be in music and create music, which is what I love to do. And I didn't have to take and be out there traveling around on the nickels and dimes.
Yeah. So prior to your move, you said in 93, you were traveling as a musician, but still based out of Maine.
Yes.
Okay. And so then in 93, you made the decision to move to Nashville, and that started your production career?
I got into production and development. So I would take in and work with a singer that needs production, doesn't know where to go, and I would take him and build his career, or at least build his sound so that he could take it someplace to the labels or whatever, and hopefully get a deal and start building his career.
I am so ignorant in the music industry. Do you work independently of a label?
Yes.
Okay.
You've got your major labels, then you got your major independents, which like major labels corporate owned, major independent will be owned by, say, Curb Records, Mike Curb. And you've got others out there that have their independent record labels that aren't major labels, but yet because they have the money to put behind them, they have the ability to create hit records. They're a major independent. Then you've got true independence, which is what I am. I'm a true independent. I don't work off from a lot of different platforms like they do. I'll produce somebody, I'll get them ready, and then we'll make the decision, do we take them to radio ourselves and try and build it, or do we try and pitch them to labels? And that's the status of each label. So the independents, the true independents, work off from investors or investment groups or people that want to spend money into something and build something, and they look at it as going to Vegas and pulling the one-arm bandit. We might get a hit, we might not, but we're going to have some fun because we enjoy music. So there's so many different levels of that, and you just keep building. And now that it's changed because of streaming and all that, everybody thinks it's easier to get a hit record, and it's not. There are some lucky ones that'll get out there and they'll go viral real quick. Sometimes it's longevity, it lasts, and sometimes it doesn't last long. And that, to me, is sad that people think that streaming is going to make them a star, because streaming basically cost songwriters and a lot of people their livelihood. Because back in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, if you went to saw a singer, you would at the time buy albums or CDs or whatever they were selling. And the songwriter that was on, that maybe have written a song on one of those albums, if that artist sold, a million copies or 500,000 copies, they made money off from every single record that was sold. And I had a friend of mine that made 20, 30 grand off of a record that was just never released. It was just put out there and he sold it, and he had one hit record off the album, but he sold a bunch of albums, and my songwriter friend made a ton of money. That wouldn't happen today because streaming, they only pay percentage of pennies for every time it's streamed. So to make $20,000, you'd have to take and have 10 million streams or more. It's just ridiculously high. So they've really changed the dynamic of it all, and it's made it a lot tougher.
Yeah. I imagine that there's parts of it that are more saturated too, because everybody is trying to do something themselves and go viral. Yeah.
It's friends. I've got friends of mine, and we'll have a smile when we go on Facebook and we see somebody says, I just released my record today. And then we look to see if where it was released. It's on iTunes. That's not a record release. That is just putting something up on a platform, like you'd put a consignment piece of whatever it is in a store to sell. Because unless people are being driven to that site to download that song, nothing's going to happen. It's just a release that they call a release. Whereas most people look at a record release in the business as a record that is now, instead of being sent out like it used to be, it's digitally delivered, but it goes to radio. You've got radio promoters promoting it, and you're building up those numbers in the charts, hoping that the more numbers you get, the more plays you get in the areas, you can create a tour out of it to where you can look at, I'm getting played in Dallas, Texas. I'm getting played in Louisiana. I'm getting played in Mississippi. Okay, let's see what radio stations are close to that, and then you build a tour so that you can actually make money off from performances and merchandise, and you build yourself a name. That's so much tougher now because everybody's all these venues are looking at your numbers. And this is so misleading, because if you look at some of my numbers, I don't push them. I like my Instagram, I think I've got a little over 1,000 people that follow me. That's not many. I've got friends of mine that's got 20, 30, 40, 50,000 followers. And I made a bet with one of them one time. I said, you know what? I said, I bet you that if you put out there and said, I'm going to be performing in such and such a place, and you put it out to all your 50,000 followers, and let's say that venue holds 200 people, I bet you're lucky if you get 50 from your 50,000 followers. You're only going to get local people that's going to come in. And he started making all these excuses. I said, no, I'm not throwing any darts at you. I'm just saying these numbers are misleading.
Yeah.
Because now sometimes you can get in there and you can target your numbers. Where are they at? But it doesn't mean that they're following you for your music, or they're following you for you might put a lot of stuff on there that's funny. They might like that. You just don't know. So it can be so misleading, and it's really tough for a lot of people.
Yeah. As somebody that has seen both ends of this, you have a very unique perspective. I'm sure a lot of your peers feel the same way. But just from a social media standpoint, I completely understand what you're saying. It is very misleading. You've got people buying followers. You've got people enticing others to follow them in one way or another, that it's not building an actual fan base. It's just a number on a screen.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when you get into the big stars, their fan base is fan base. They don't have to buy these numbers. They don't have to do anything like them. They don't have to take them. They don't even worry about them. But when you're starting out and these labels are looking at your numbers, it's, man, those numbers don't mean crap.
Yeah.
Most of the time. If you've got 100, I've got a lot of followers that follow me, and they'll make comments. And when they're making comments and they're doing all this and they're liking what I'm doing, I know that they're following. But I can put out of, I don't know, I on Facebook and my personal and my professional page, I got, I don't know, 8 to 10,000 followers. I bet if I put out something, perfect example. I put out a post yesterday that the Grammy just came out, and I put out a post that I've got 2 artists of mine that are on the ballot for Grammy, and because of that, I'm on the ballot for Producer of the Year on the Grammy. I got 100 likes, and I got maybe 200, but it was not 8,000.
Sure.
So there's, out of all these people that follow you, doesn't mean they're engaged. You know, and the perfect example is anybody that has a podcast or whatever. They'll understand this, because if they go into their Apple dashboard, they'll see engaged, listening, followers, and all this. And it's the ones that you want to get. You want to get the ones that engage with you.
Yes.
So if that's 100 or 1,000 or 5,000, if they're all engaged, then that's when you have a really true fan base. Just having people that are liking you for whatever reason.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm going to like him because my friend likes him. You've got a lot of that. And I don't know half the people that like me, follow me, and I don't even know why they do. Because now I do have some that tell me we might not like or say anything, but we're following you. And there is that percentage. But I don't think that's that huge a percentage.
Right.
So I truly at sometimes don't know why people are following me, because they're not engaging. I know the people, when I put up a post, I can usually know the ones that are going to take and make a comment or say something.
Yep.
And to me, that's what counts. Those are the real fans. Those are the real people that will buy your product, that will help you, that will promote you, that will spread your word.
Yeah.
And that's what these labels and all these people should be more interested in, rather than just pure numbers.
100%. The engagement.
Yeah.
Is what matters. Yeah, that's building community right there. That's a tale as old as time. But now in this new age of technology, and that's not really new anymore, but it's evolving so quickly.
It is.
I think too, there are people that are starting to see, wow, this app isn't actually as valuable as we thought it was. Let's take a few steps back and reassess where we're going to take this. So I do think that's coming, as slow as it's coming.
It's just a thing where people have to understand that. And I put this out on Facebook a few times a year. It's, don't get jealous or envious of friends of yours that you see make a post that looks so glamorous and great, because their life is not that. It's a perception they build. No one's going to put on there, I had a tooth pulled today, and I had a flat tire, and I was hoping to get this job, but I didn't. And they're not going to put the negative stuff on there.
Sure.
They're only going to put positive stuff. And I've seen some people that actually have put that kind of stuff, but they're very rare. So most of the time, people are putting all this perception of how great they're doing. And in reality, they're not doing that great. They're doing okay. And for somebody to get out there that's really trying to make something out of their life or their career or whatever, and they get envious of other people because they see them do this, you can't do that. Because you can only do what you're doing and hope people are liking what you're doing. And then if you keep building and expanding and growing more fans, then it's working.
Yeah.
So if you've got 100 fans that love what you're doing, that's just as good as 1 million fans that some of them like what you're doing, but some of them just following you just to follow you.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's important. It's
It
an
is.
important aspect of it for sure. Yeah. So you moved to Nashville in 93. You started production. Now, where are you now with that? You got a lot of years under your belt in doing this.
Yeah, my first goal when I moved to Nashville was just to do production development. Basically, if a singer came to me, needed production, didn't know how to do all the stuff, I would help them get radio ready and label ready. So I'd guide them on their looks, what to wear, what not to wear, how to look, guide them on the song selection, just really create a package that when it's presented to somebody that hopefully they like what they hear. And I started out doing that. And then in 2005, my production development turned into a label because I had some people that came to me that had some investment groups and everything together, and they didn't want to wait. Because when you pitch to a major label, like I sat down with Capitol Records one time with a singer that I was producing, pitched him 4 songs, had a picture of her, had everything laid out. He listened to probably half the song, then he listened to the next half, the next song, listened to all 4 songs. And he looked at me, he goes, man, she's good. I like her. We can make a deal. But it's going to take a year to a year and a half before we can do anything.
Wow.
So we had to decide, do you want to sign with Capitol Records and you can go out for the next year and a half and say Capitol recording artist, but you don't have any records out yet. And then in the change of time, if the music changes slightly and they go a different direction and it's not what you're doing, they'll still hold true to their contract, but they just won't push it, won't do that well, and then they'll just drop you. I said, and the kiss of death in Nashville, New York, or LA is, why was you on a record label and then all of a sudden they dropped you?
Oh, yeah.
So what do you want to do? So I gave that option to them to make the decision. They didn't want to wait. They didn't do it. So you've got all those kind of scenarios. So this group sat down with me and said, okay, what's the options? I said, the options, I can pitch this artist to a label, wait, pitch this artist to a label, wait. I said, and then maybe we'll get a deal, and we still wait. Let's do it now. So I started, who will you get? And I said, I know some people in Nashville that can do all this. Who's going to oversee them? I said, I will. How can you oversee them? I said, because I've worked at radio. I know how it works. I know the promoters because those the promoters that I was working with back when I was doing my thing. I said, they're still out there doing it. I said, I know how it works. Then you got to do it. So I had to make a decision on whether I wanted to be a record label, if I wanted to stay right where I was. So I dove in, and in the last 2005, so 18 years, I've had probably 40 hit records out there that I've done.
Wow.
I've had some monitored records. I produced country, pop, adult contemporary, R&B, jazz. And right now, I produced Jackie Wilson's son, Bobby Wilson. I managed and produced him for 8 years. I produced and handled Debbie Campbell, which is Glenn Campbell's daughter. For those people that remember Happy Days, I've got Donnie Most, which was Ralph Malph. And he is a tremendous singer, Frank Sinatra, Bobby Darin, just huge. So we've released him over in the UK. He's got a top 40 hit over there right now. His album's up for a Grammy this year. Debbie's single that we released here a few months ago is up for a Grammy. So it's worked out well.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I can't complain.
That's pretty cool. And you got off the road, so you've been home in Nashville for the past 18 years.
No, actually 30. I've been in Nashville 30.
Okay. Oh,
Yep.
That's right, 93.
Yep. This year here is my 30th anniversary of being in
Wow.
Nashville.
Yeah, you have to celebrate or something.
I did a podcast here a couple of months ago that does shows on anniversaries of businesses.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah,
That's cool.
That's all they do. And so I was on that, and that was went over the whole thing of what I've done. But yeah, it's worked out well. I've just, like we was talking earlier, you just never know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. But when I first moved here, it was just for production development. Then it worked into record label. Then I wound up doing more management. And then when the pandemic hit, I decided to do just for myself, just for the fun of it. And that turned into some charity work that I'm doing. You just never know what's going to happen.
Truly, yeah. And that charity work has snowballed, correct?
Yes, it's really amazing how it snowballed, but it didn't start out on autism.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When I was working on my CD, a songwriter I had cut one of his songs with an artist that I'd produced a few years ago, and he sent me this song. He goes, "I think this is one of my better songs," and the title was "Why Not Me." I listened to it, and I'm going, "Whoa, this is me," because it's about never giving up on your dreams. If there's a mountain to climb it, just don't give up. So I called him up. I said, "I really like this song." I said, "And if you look at my Facebook, I'm always putting stuff out there saying, never give up on your dreams. Doesn't matter when you do it, only matters that you do it." I said, "This is that song." So I said, "I'm going to cut this, and just for the fun of it." So I cut it, and my promoters that I work with knew that I was working on my own stuff, and because the pandemic was there, they didn't have a whole lot to do. So they said, "Send us a song that you're doing. We want to hear it." So I sent in New York, Nashville, LA, and London, I sent them "Why Not Me." And the funny part about this, humorous, not funny, is I recorded it more as a pop song, but I added a steel guitar in it to give it a little texture like the Eagles used to do.
Okay.
And because of that, everybody that heard it thought it was a country song. And I'm going, "It's not a country song." And even my aggregator for iTunes, when I told him we were going to put it in country, he goes, "This isn't a country song." I said, "I know." I said, "But everybody's calling it country, so I guess that's what we have to go with."
I guess so.
My promoters promoted it to radio, and it hit the charts. And I never thought I'd have a chart record. It's been 30 years since I hit the charts.
Yeah.
So I am back in the charts again. And I just did this for the fun of it. I didn't do it to get back on the road. And when they told me we got to take this to radio, I said, "You're out of your mind." I said, "I'm not going to get back on the road. I'm not going to take and perform." I said, "I'm just doing this for fun to give to my kids, grandkids, friends, family, whoever might want it." So they said, "Yeah, but do it." So they talked me into doing it, and I did it. And I said, "If I'm going to do this, we got to pay attention to somebody." So I did a video paying tribute to our first responders. And I had done a few years earlier than that, I had done an EP for a fallen officer's family to raise some money for him to help him. He was a songwriter, his brother was a singer. So I recorded his brother singing his brother's songs.
Wow.
And then we sold the CDs and we gave it to the fallen officer's wife. So I called up some of my friends of mine on the police side, and I said, I think I'm going to pay tribute to the first responders. Can you get me some pictures and video clips? And all of a sudden, it went viral.
Wow.
And this is before anything became viral. And I had people sending me pictures and video clips from all over the country.
Wow.
So I put that all together and I put it out there, and I wound up getting, 125,000 views or something on it. And it went well, and we hit the charts at radio. And then, like anything that you release, it has a shelf life. It's going to end. Mm-hmm. There is an ending point. So it ended. And I said, okay, that was fun. Hopefully here the pandemic's going to be over soon. I get back to doing what I'm doing, getting some shows for my artists and doing what we do. And then this lady calls me and she goes, "I love what you did for the first responders. Can you do that for us?" And she's a speech therapist for autistic children. And I said, "I don't know anything about autism. What do you want to do?" And she goes, "We're thinking maybe you could sell the CD, we'd help you promote it and donate some money or whatever. And I said, you don't understand what it takes to do this. I said, I don't think the charity is going to be geared to do this. So we wound up talking back and forth, and I met the CEO and the vice president and all that. But ultimately, it wasn't a good fit because in order for them to do and get what they wanted out of this, they would have had to put so much effort into it. And you can only put so much effort into something when you're trying to do a charity. So it didn't work out, which was just as well. And again, it was one of those things that didn't work out, but was a blessing that it didn't work out. Because then this podcast out of New York called me and they said, we'd like you to co-host a podcast with us for 5, 6, 7 shows. And it was a local celebrity up in New York. And I said, yeah, okay. I said, we'll talk about my music, what I do in Nashville. I said, and then we've got to talk about my video that I just did for autism in Nashville. So I re-recorded the song in a more adult contemporary pop. And then I did a video and I call it Why Not Me Nashville, so that it would be different from Why Not Me. And then I included autistic people and special needs in that video. And it's been out for about a year and it's almost to 250,000 views.
Wow. And
so I did those 7 shows and they wanted me to do 10 more. And I'm going, no, it don't work. This is more of a business platform. I don't think this works. And they said, what are you going to do? I said, I'll just start my own.
Yeah.
So I knew nothing about podcasting, but I did have the gear.
Yes, you do.
So I said, let's see what this. So I started diving into it a little bit. And then I started talking to some of these people that I'd talked with about doing something. I said, do you think that you could get me some people that would like to talk about their autism? Whether it be them, their kids, their grandkids, or whatever the topic may be, and we'll see what we can do with this. They said, yeah. I figured I'd do 2 shows a month. That's what I figured it would be, because I wasn't getting a whole lot of people coming my way. And I think maybe this thing will last a few months and won't last all that long. So I got enough to do 3 months. So I had 6 people that had signed up and said, yeah, we'll do the interview. Then I released the first interview the latter part of June. And this just blew my mind. Because you and I were talking about the first episode I put up, which was with Tony Lloyd out of France.
Yeah.
Okay. I put that up and I just told people what I was going to do. And then they say you got to put up something. They said that you got to put up 5 minutes just so they can get on the platforms. I said, I'm not going to put up 5 minutes. I'm going to put up a show. That way they can listen, they can find out what I'm going to do, and hopefully I'll gain some listeners. So I put it up the end of May, and I figured I'd wait 5 weeks to make sure that it got on all the platforms, and then I'd release my first episode. By the time that I released my first episode, Listen Notes had me in the top 10%.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going, where did this come from? I couldn't believe it. So then I released the first one, and she just blew up on me. People loved her story. And then that's where I found that the autistic community, they spread the word. They talk with each other. So all of a sudden, I had 5 people that she'd got me to record just from doing hers.
Wow.
And then another person found some others, and then some other people found some others, and it just kept growing. And then all of a sudden, I had 3 episodes out there, and then August, I had so many people I'd recorded that I decided that I have to take this to a weekly podcast. And I've got enough now to where the people I'm recording now is scheduled for January and February of next year.
That's awesome.
So it just grew.
Yeah.
And then along with that, my Listen Notes kept going up. It went from 10% to 5% to 3% to 1.5%. Now I'm in the top 1% of over 3 million podcasts.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe it.
Wow. That's such a cool story. I didn't realize that you had really nothing to do with autism before you started with this. Yeah.
Nothing. I told several of the autistic charities that I was talking with that I felt that I was not the voice, because I don't have anybody in my family that's autistic. I know nothing about autism.
Yeah.
The only thing I knew about autism was a friend of mine has an autistic nephew. And he would just say, oh, yeah, I got a nephew and he's autistic. He didn't tell me what he went through.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me anything. He just told me he was autistic. So I didn't know anything about it. And then because everybody's vision of autism is Rain Man, which I knew that wasn't true, but that's the only thing I knew. So when I was talking, so I had a friend of mine that put me in touch with a charity, and she had 2 autistic children. So I told her what I was going to do, and she goes, I love it. She goes, I don't think there's anything out there like this.
Wow.
And I started doing a deep dive into it, and I listened to a lot of the podcasts, and I couldn't find anything like it. There's people that talk with people that are autistic, but they also have other people that are talking to them about the scientific part about it. They talk about this part of it. These people aren't really telling their stories. They're just telling some. I said, this will be interesting to see if this works or not. It just keeps growing and just keep growing. You're familiar with Chartable. Okay, I've hit a lot of charts in all different countries around the world. The Apple podcast charts, I'm hitting multiple charts in different countries. It's just totally blown me away.
Yeah. You said it. You've really found an incredible niche.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it was so necessary because representation is so important, right? And so giving people a platform to tell their stories from this perspective is important.
Yeah, and the good thing about it is, as it turns out, I guess I was the voice for them, because I'm asking them questions that most people that don't know anything about them would be asking them. So I'm asking them, okay, what age was they diagnosed? What age did you start seeing this? So I'm asking them all these different questions. And the cool part about this is that I can ask that same question to every different person that's on my podcast, and the story is completely different.
Yes.
Which is cool.
Yeah. I just love that it's not from any sort of scientific perspective. That's out there and that's important. It has its place, but the power of storytelling, especially for people whose voices aren't necessarily amplified.
Yeah. And now there's one, I didn't get into a lot of scientific stuff, but I did get into it a little bit. September's first episode was about suicide, because suicide is September's Suicide Month. But what a lot of people don't know, and I didn't know until I started doing a little research, suicide is the second leading cause of death among autistic people.
Oh my.
Yeah. So I had Dr. Rachel Mosley on, and she's a researcher over in just outside of London or Manchester, one or the other. And she's autistic herself, so she told me her story of autistic, and then she told me her research, and it was pretty amazing. So a lot of people that I told them, they said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to listen to that, because I said, yeah, but it's not a downer. It's not something that you can listen to. It's not depressing. I said, because I didn't want to do a depressing podcast. I wanted to do something that kind of led people to see some of the markers on why they do this.
Yeah.
And 3 out of 4 people diagnosed autistic are boys. But the one thing that many people in the autistic world and community think there's more autistic females than are diagnosed, because a lot of autistic females don't get diagnosed because they try and fit in. And then if they don't fit in, they can start getting depressed. And then that's when the suicide thoughts come in.
Wow.
So it was pretty interesting.
It is interesting.
So I was talking with a lady the other day, and she runs a charity. And when I very first started talking to her, I just asked her a question. She would talk, because I didn't know what to ask. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we're talking about this stuff, and I'm in my 14th episode now. I think it's 14th. And she goes, wait a minute. She goes, I said, what? She goes, you and I are actually having conversation about autism. She goes, when you first started out, you didn't have anything to say. Wow. I said, yeah. I said, I've learned a lot. I said, it's opened my eyes completely. And then I've got some people say, oh man, now you're becoming you're acing this. You're really getting a lot of knowledge of autism. I said, no. I said, I'm the tip of the iceberg that you can see that's all I know.
Yeah.
I said, there's a body of ice underneath it that's huge that I know nothing about.
Yeah.
I said, I'm still learning. I'm learning every day. But the interesting part is I'm just meeting new friends all around the world.
Yeah.
Because it's called Why Not Me, the World. And it's truly turned into a worldwide podcast because it's hitting the charts in all these different countries. And I've got people coming to me from all over the world that I talk with. So it's cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
So what was the turning point for you between I'm not your guy to now this is something you're doing?
I figured that I'd do the video and that would be it. And then when I did the podcast and I had people saying, we've listened to your podcast, we like what you have to say about autism in it. But they're not getting it. I said, yeah, I know they're not getting it. So that's when I decided maybe I'll start my own and just see where it goes. Because I started doing my deep dive into podcasts. And it's interesting that a huge amount of podcasts don't make it past 8 episodes.
Wow.
And I'm going, and I was telling a friend of mine that, and they said, how are you? I said, I've already got 10 recorded. So I guess I'll make it to 10.
Yeah.
But I just felt that, okay, let's see how it goes. I've had people calling me up that are autistic, people that are in the autistic community that aren't autistic, that maybe run charities and stuff. And they have said to me, they said, we really like your questions. And it seems like you care. I said, how can you ask these people something and not care about what they're telling you? I've got a TV station over in the UK that they just love what I'm doing. They've done a couple of interviews with me about it. They keep me up there so that people can do it. And they sent me a lady that I recorded here a couple of weeks ago that is raising an autistic niece. And this one's going to rip people's hearts out because she's raising her autistic niece because her sister died. And now she's just found out that she's got lung cancer. She's got a year to live, and she's trying to find another place for who's going to take care of her niece when she's gone. But some of the stuff she told me is just very enlightening, and it's not depressing. She's a very uplifting lady.
Yeah, but you know what? It's important to look at this stuff head on. It's important to say, I acknowledge that this is your struggle, because to turn a blind eye is lacking compassion.
So many people think that, I was talking with one mother one time, and she said it best. She goes, I told a friend of mine that my son was just diagnosed autistic. And the person said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And she goes, why are you sorry? It's not a death sentence. So I think the perception of what people think autism is. Now, there's a reason why they call it a spectrum. You've got some that are on this end of the spectrum that have a very difficult time and will never be able to live by themselves. Then you've got people like Einstein that's on the other end of that spectrum that are amazing people and do different things. I was talking with one guy, and he told me his story, and he goes, you can walk into any lab, and you can throw a stone at any person, and 9 chances out of 10, whoever you hit is autistic. Because they're very high-functioning people, and even though they don't like that term anymore, but that's what a lot of my parents use. But they can function well, and they're very focused. You give them something to do, and they will get it done. They're very focused and dedicated. People just got to find the right definition of what autism is, and they're going to see a whole different world from what they think it is.
Sure. I think ignorance is the biggest barrier to compassion. So,
well, I come up with a slogan from my Why Not Me, the World, and it's autism, awareness, acceptance, and understanding. And I really thought it was, as I was looking into autism and I was looking into all the things that the charities do and everything, I really thought that it was very strange that they had Autism Awareness Month and Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. But I'm a firm believer that you can be aware of something and you can accept it because you're aware of it. But just because you're aware of it and accept it doesn't mean you know anything about it.
100%.
So I was just totally baffled that they don't have something to do with understanding in there.
Yeah.
So I went on and trademarked it.
Did
you?
Yep,
I trademarked it, and I said autism awareness, acceptance, and understanding.
Good for you.
That's my believing, is that this podcast is hopefully going to be bringing more understanding, because these people that are telling their stories, they're not just telling their stories of how they live and what they go through. They're telling stories of things that they might do today, or the things that they did yesterday that they couldn't have done the day before. They're telling me the life story. They're not just telling me a little story. And some of them will make you laugh. They just say something, you laugh. And then some of them make you cry, almost make you cry, because it's, oh man. And some of the things that people have gone through and they go through and they do on a daily basis is totally amazing.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning so much from these people, and I'm gaining friends every time I do with it, and I'm gaining knowledge of it. And it's turned out way better than I thought it was going to be.
That's fantastic. I think your posture of listening and keeping your mind and ears open rather than trying to be the voice that is just filling in, I think that means a lot. And I think that speaks to your success.
Yeah, I like the lady that called me the other day, and she's going to be on my podcast in January. And here all along, I've known her for, I don't know, 15 years. I never knew she was autistic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She said, I'm autistic, right? I said, no, I didn't. I said, and she goes, oh, yeah. And she plays guitar and sings, and she travels around the country doing these different things that she enjoys doing. So I'm going to have her on here in January. And she goes, I just love the questions you ask. And I said, I'm just asking from somebody that don't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm not ignorant anymore of it, but I'm still got to gain knowledge. And so I just try and get the question to get them talking and telling the stories. And then the editing part, put it together so that it tells the story in a good way so that people can follow it. And I've got a lot of great reviews on. I'm just totally amazed.
Yeah. So we talked about your dreams. Do you have, but walking that tightrope, do you have a dream for where you would love for this to go?
I don't. The only thing that I hope that it can do is, I hope that I've told this to a couple different people, is if I can see at some point in time that it's helped one person per episode, then it's a success.
Yeah.
And usually you don't get to see that, because you interview people and they go out there and they live their life, and you don't usually get to hear I hear some of the success stories that they tell, but I don't hear the success stories where this helps somebody else. But I had one where she did my podcast, and then she was able to meet people that she hadn't been able to meet because of my podcast.
Wow.
She met them, went to it, got invited to a seminar that they do once a year that she'd never been invited to. And then she went and did something in the court system. And I don't know what it was yet. I haven't found out. Someday she'll tell me. But she sent me, but I saw a picture of it she put on Facebook, and she goes, I won. And this is for all the autistic women out there.
Wow.
So I don't know what it was, but she sent me a message saying I was able to do that because I gained confidence because of what your podcast did for me. So that was a win.
Yeah.
So now I got 14 out there. I don't know if I got 14 wins or not. Or I don't know if I got more than 14. I don't know. But just the fact that I know that people are listening and hope. But I have seen some of the comments that's been made. And some of the comments say, hey, I've been in autism all my whole life, and I'm learning things that I didn't know.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells me that it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, there's value there for
Yeah.
sure.
So I don't know how long it's going to last. It might last a year, 6 months. I don't know. So I don't have any goals. I'm not setting any goals. I'm just doing it.
Yeah.
And then when it gets to the point where I don't have any more people that want to be on it, or something happens that tells me, okay, this is done, then I'll be done.
Yeah.
But I'll just keep doing it as long as it presents itself and makes good sense too.
Sure. I think maybe your career has paved the way for that acceptance and that way of thinking. But speaking of your career, is there any milestone that you haven't reached that you would like to?
There's a couple that everybody likes to have. One's a Grammy. I've been on the ballot for Grammy 5 times. Haven't won one yet. Haven't even got nominated because it's a tough thing. Like right now, I'm on the ballot for Grammy. There's 194 other producers on there.
Wow.
And some of those producers have produced Shania Twain, Carrie Underwood, Beyonce. You can just go on and on.
Yeah.
I don't stand a chance against people like that. Even though I've done some good work and I've put had chart records. And so there's always, that would be nice. If I go through this life and I never win a Grammy, that's not my end all.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, my life's a failure, I didn't win a Grammy. I look at my career, I've helped a lot of people. I've gotten a lot of people in the charts. I've gotten them recognition. I've got them shows. I've helped their careers. I've made them better singers. There's a lot of things that I've done that has real value, that this lasting value, where if you win a Grammy, you put the Grammy on a shelf. And that's nice to talk about, but tomorrow it's yesterday's news.
Right.
So I've got things out there that are lasting. So to me, yeah, would it be nice to have a Grammy? Would it be nice to have a number one song? I came close. I had a number two, but I didn't get the number one. That would be nice. But again, is that going to change my life, that number one? No. The number two came in, and people look at my music history and they look at what I've done, and not having that number one doesn't make a difference.
Sure.
Platinum records, stuff like that would be nice. But again, that's just stuff that's awards.
Yeah.
And I don't live my life for awards. I live my life to do what I do. And then if I get recognition and something comes along, that's great. If it doesn't, that's life.
Yeah. Yeah. You're still doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And doing it well. Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it.
And is Nashville forever home, you think?
I've been here 30 years now, and Nashville is home. I go back to Maine twice a year, see friends, family. Maine's a great state. I've got friends of mine that are up there right now that live here in Nashville. He just called me today. He goes, I'm in Bar Harbor, he says. He goes, where's a good place to go to get some lobster? He goes, then we're going to Arcadia. And my banker, she just went up to Maine. She said, I think we're going to take our vacation to Maine this year. Tell me what to do. So I gave her the routes on what to go. And she came back. She goes, I want to go back again.
Wow.
Maine's a great state. The only thing is Maine's a cold state.
It is.
You've got to take and be ready for 30 below in the wintertime, 3 feet of snow, 4 feet of snow. You got to be ready for that. I go back every Christmas because to me, Christmas isn't Christmas without snow.
Yeah.
So I go back, and then I try and go back at least once or twice a year again. I usually go up in the summer, and sometimes if I can get an extra one in, I'll go. So Maine is still home, but Nashville is home too.
Yeah.
Because I've been here long enough to where I can go to, people know me. When I first moved here, I knew 2 people in Nashville, and that was about it. Now there's probably only 2 people I don't know. No, not that, but I know a lot of people. So
yeah, you have built your career. You've made your name for sure.
So yeah, I've got friends of mine that live in Florida. I got friends of mine that live in Arizona. I love San Diego.
Okay.
I did a show out in San Diego with an artist of mine, and man, San Diego is nice. It's by the ocean. It's warm all the time. It's a clean city. I love San Diego, but would I move there? Probably not.
Yeah.
Just for the expense of moving into California. And there's a reason why people are moving away from California.
That's true.
Is because it's just so expensive to live there. But, would I go? I'd love to go to some of these places, but would I want to go there and live? I got a lot of friends of mine that go to Florida for the winter, and I don't know if I'd want to be in Florida for 6 months. I had a friend of mine that he was mowing his lawn, and he goes, you ever had that feeling that you're being watched? I said, yeah. He goes, I turned around. He goes, just looking. He goes, there was an alligator following me. No. I said, what'd you do? He goes, I mowed right into in the garage and shut my door. I don't know if I'd want to be there for that.
Yeah. No, that's very true. The difference between visiting somewhere and living somewhere is big.
Yeah, and you've got... If you get down in the southern part of Florida, down in the Everglades and all that, you've got all the snakes and the alligators and all the stuff down there to worry about.
Yeah.
No, I think Tennessee has rattlers and copperheads, which are dangerous. And then because they've got a couple, they got the recluse spider, and then they've got, I think, one other that can be dangerous. But for the most part, Tennessee's not too bad. But the one good thing about Maine, you don't have any of that.
Yeah.
Although there are some poison snakes that's getting up, I've heard, in the lower part of Maine, but not. But it's so cold that
they stay away.
Yeah, they stay away. But funny story that I had is when I first moved down here, I had a friend of mine that knew us from Maine. He'd born and raised right here in Nashville, and he goes, I might like to visit Maine. He goes, but I wouldn't go out into their woods. and I looked at him, I laughed, and I said, why wouldn't you go into Maine's woods? He goes, bear and moose. I said, I was born and raised on a fairly large dairy farm. I said, I went out in the woods all the time. You want to know how many bear and moose I saw while I was living on the farm? He goes, how many? I said, none. I said, now you can go up. You can go up in the northern part of Maine. I said, you can go in. Although one time in my little town of Madison, I went into town and there was a moose that was just happened to be sauntering his way through town, and that probably the one and only time we saw a moose in that town. But I just laughed at him. I said, there is nothing. I said, although Maine is getting a little more dangerous with some bobcats and stuff like that. I said, but I'd go out in the Maine woods, no problem. I said, but I wouldn't go out into the Tennessee woods. And he goes, why? I said, you got copperheads, you got rattlers, you've got all these things that can get you. Oh, he goes, you just wear big boots, whatever. He goes, because he was used to going, it was no big deal. But he just thought Maine would be really dangerous, and I just had a big laugh out of that.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, what you're used to matters.
Perspective.
For sure. I do have one question that I ask everybody at the end of my show, and that is, through the lens of your experience, what does it mean for you to be compassionate?
People have to learn how to give. And that's the thing. It's when you look at people that need help and you judge them before you know why they need help. Mm-hmm. Now, it's one thing to see somebody that needs help that's not helping themselves and they're doing things that you know that they could do better. And you can judge them at that point because you have something to judge. But it's those people that go out and judge people and don't know what the story is behind it. And then sometimes you just got to take and have a little blind faith and help somebody because you just don't know when that could turn and it could be you because life's short and you're here today, gone tomorrow, or you're healthy today, you're not tomorrow. It's like if you ever watched Grey's Anatomy, I started watching that one time a long time ago when it first came out, and back when Denny was on it, and he was dying, and I can't remember Izzy, I think it was her name. She was in love with him, and they were talking back and forth, and he goes, "You got to understand something." He goes, "I was healthy until I wasn't," and that when he said that line, I thought that was one of the best lines that's been in TV. Because, I was healthy until I wasn't. And that's the way we all are. We all are healthy, and then all of a sudden one day, you got this little ache or a little something, and you find out that you've got this or that. I had a friend of mine just 4 or 5 years ago that called me up, and he had lung cancer. Eight months later, he was gone. Oh, God. You've really got to take and look at life a little bit differently, because the older you get, the more you realize that it is precious and you just never know. And compassion is showing those that need it a little bit, even though you might think they don't. Yeah.
I love that question because everybody has a different perspective and therefore different answers. But thank you for that, because I agree. And that is a fantastic line, and that's gonna stick with me.
Oh, it is. It's a great line.
Oh man.
It was probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I still remember it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where it was going because I was like, oh, Grey's Anatomy, yes. But that was a very good one. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Everything is perspective. You've got to look at it on how other people are going to look at it. It's like you can't define your life on what other people think, but you can navigate around those so that if you don't give them the reason to think about it. Because in podcasts and TV shows and whatever you're trying to do, music, there's always going to be the haters out there. People that's going to try and find fault for whatever reason they try and find fault. They're not happy with their life. They're not happy that they didn't get a chance to have stardom. Who knows? But there's always those people that are going to throw darts at somebody. So you can't live your life in fear of those people that's going to throw the darts, but you can live your life in a way that you navigate to give them less of an opportunity to throw that dart. So what I try and do is I just try and I don't, people get so caught up in this politically correct stuff. And what I try and do is I don't look at it as politically correct. I look at it as what is it correct for the situation so that it doesn't cause anybody any issues to throw darts at me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just try and navigate through those waters and give people less and less of a chance to have a reason to throw a dart. Try and do as much good as I can. Try and do the work as good as I can. And then hopefully the majority of the people will like it. And those that don't, if I've got 7 out of 10 people that like what I'm doing, I can live with those odds.
Yeah.
You wish for better. But if you're getting down to 6 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, it's okay. What do I need to do? But if you're up around the 70% mark and you're getting that kind of response, then you're doing okay.
Yeah.
And you don't worry so much about the other 30%.
Sure.
But
sure.
I always try and get 100%, but you're never going to get that.
No, can't please everybody all the time.
No, you can't.
And like you said, some people are just going to be miserable no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's on them. And right. And yeah, you just, again, you try to have compassion for whatever they're going through that you don't realize.
I've tried my friend that died on me here a few years ago with the cancer. Mm-hmm. He said, there's 2 things I am. He goes, and I'm an Aquarius. He goes, you're like water. I said, of course I am. I'm an Aquarius. And he goes, yeah, but water never stops. He goes, when water hits a bridge or water hits something that's going to stop it, it keeps searching for ways to keep moving. Mm-hmm. He goes, you're like water because you keep going. And I said, that's pretty good. and he says, you try and fix things. He goes, you try and fix things. Sometimes you can't fix things. He goes, but you try. The way I look at it, my podcast, my music, everything's, I'm trying to fix these people to give them something that they can sit back and say, okay, I'm not perfectly fixed, but this little thing here that he did or this little thing helped.
Yeah.
So I don't look at fixing as helping. Mm-hmm. So when he told me fixing, I said, I think I changed that definition to helping instead of fixing.
Yeah.
Because when I'm trying to fix people, I'm trying to help them. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to tell them how they need to live their life or what they need to do. I'm just trying to say, maybe if you tried this or tried this. So with my podcast, with my music, I'm just trying to help I'm trying to use that platform to help as many people as I can. All through, when I was in Maine, there was a charity called Pine Tree Camp for Crippled Children. And if they ever needed, if they was doing a show, they needed a band or they needed something, I was always, hey, just call me. If I'm available, I'll be there. Because it's about helping people. So I've always tried to help people as much as I can. This first responders, I tried to point the video, I try to point, and people can still go to it now. And if they want, there's 2 or 3 charities on there that help all our first responders that I point them to. Yeah. So they can donate to. With autism, I'm doing more of a grassroots type thing. Mm-hmm. I haven't committed myself to any one charity. If somebody asks me, who do you represent? Who do you think of? I tell them, why don't you find your local charity that really needs the help and donate to them? Because a lot of these bigger charities, they suck, when they walk into the room, they suck all the air out. Yeah. And all the little charities are left there trying to get what's left.
Yeah, the pennies.
Yeah. So I'm trying to make it as grassroots as I can right now. Yeah. And just build it and hopefully create something that can help.
It's fantastic. I have loved our conversation. I'm so encouraged by what you're doing because you have so much faith in it, first of all. But second of all, I believe that what you are doing your absolute best to do the absolute best. And I just think that the world could use more of those types of people. So I appreciate what you're doing.
No, I appreciate that.
But thank you so much for sitting down with me and, again, lending us your studio for
thanks
this evening.
For having me. I really appreciate it.
Good. And we'll definitely shout out your podcast as well, Why Not Me, the World.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to The Human Experience. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends and family, share it on social media, and rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also support the podcast financially by going to my website, thehxpod.com, linked in the show notes, and clicking on Donate. It takes a lot of time and resources to create this podcast, so every little bit helps. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours, so be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.